Okay, we will be on the play. This hand, it's a little bit land light. I am gonna keep, even though it's, we need to draw a land, to be able to go suppression field into Fraction on life. The Form of the Dragon is not a card you want to see in your opening hand. There's couple cards like that. And that's part of the dangers with playing a deck like this, is that you've got some one-ofs that are not meant for your opening hand. They're meant for just to have in your deck, to be able to search for them. Unfortunately, sometimes you can't always get what you want, and we're seeing that. So our opponent, it looks like, did mulligan to 5 here, but this game may focus more on whether we draw out lands than how good our opponent's 5-card hand is. And it looks like we're playing against a black-white death and taxes strategy. So here's Eldrazi Displacer on turn 2. We do have Suppression Field to shut down the Displacer, and here's a Nykthos. So Nykthos was definitely not the land that we were looking for. Pretty much any other land would have been fantastic. This land, not so much. But I think we still just go ahead and play Fraction on life out. It's not pretty, so we have our on life out. If we draw another land, a white source, which essentially all of our lands produce white, so Nykthos produces white in a little bit of a different way, but we can play Runed Halo, name the Displacer if we want to, but not in love with this spot. So here's going to be the 3 coming through, and we'll see if our opponent's able to follow this up with something like a Thought Knot, another type of creature. That's going to be really bad news. And this deck, this black-white death and taxes deck, is full of creatures. So looks like could be a Thought Knot. Yep. All right. Well, this is unfortunate, and our opponent is now. We may have even wanted to scoop in response to this Thought Knot, because our opponent is now able to see exactly what's in our hand, and is able to pick it apart accordingly. And beyond that, now our opponent knows what deck we're playing. So drew a Temple, not an untapped white source. See Path to Exile on top. So that's definitely an intriguing card. I'm gonna put that one on top. So we're at 17. If we're able to get this Thought Knot off the board, draw a card off the trigger of it leaving the battlefield from the path, and then maybe face fetters the Displacer later on, who knows? But that's asking a lot. And it looks like our opponent's not done yet. Here's a follow-up play. It's going to be Thalia. Okay. So now we basically are forced to path away the Thought Knot. So let's go for that. What we'd really like to do would be draw into something like a Journey to Nowhere, or a card that's going to immediately get rid of one of these creatures. Unfortunately, it's a second copy of Enduring Ideal, so not optimal. And we're in a spot where we're going to get clocked down to 4, and now we're relying on our Fraction on life to keep us alive. So the face fetters, if we do draw an untapped land, we can face fetters away. We're going to want to face fetters the Displacer. So there's a land, okay. That's step 1. Step 2 is having this face fetters resolve. And by the way, our only untapped lands there were basic plains, so pretty fortunate to draw one, but it looks like our opponent's got a bit of a decision. So if our opponent has removal here, like Path to Exile, one option would be to path their own creature. And this would be smart for a couple different reasons. First of all, the Path to Exile is a dead card in the matchup. Doesn't do anything. We're not playing any creatures. And alright, here's a Thalia. So now two different Thalias in play for our opponent. And unfortunately, Thalias don't work quite the way we want them to. They're not like Planeswalker Jaces or Garrix, where you play the legendary card of the same name and they go away. They both stay in play. So our opponent has Thalia and Wasteland Strangler. This attack is going to bring us down to 5. And we're not going to be able to cast Enduring Ideal this turn. Nykthos doesn't actually get us there. If we had another enchantment in play, we would be in a perfect spot to resolve an Enduring Ideal. As is, like say we had Rune Halo in play, we could then resolve Enduring Ideal by activating Nykthos once, then playing the second one, activating the next Nykthos, with each Nykthos producing 5 mana. As is, Porphyr nodes were already at 0. We can play out the nodes. So let's do that. But I'm not overly optimistic with how this ends, to be honest. It looks like our opponent elected not to attack with Wasteland Strangler. But I guess that's fine because we would be going to 0. Well, actually, we would take the first strike damage first. So our opponent was probably thinking we would be going to 0 on the attack anyway. But the first strike damage would happen first, and then the normal damage. So our opponent could have had lethal right now, but instead we're at 8 infect. So, looks like another follow-up could be a Wasteland Strangler again. Okay, yep. That's what it's going to be. So, I haven't really thought much about it, but if our opponent does Wasteland Strangler their own Displacer, that would actually be a smart play. Because it would mean one less white mana symbol in play for us. So it looks like, alright, our opponent's going to do something here. It looks like it's going to be Ghost Quarter on the Nykthos. So we're going to be able to get a Plains here. And then the Nodes gets rid of Thalia. So I believe we can, let's see, we can make 4, no, I believe we're 1 off from Enduring Ideal. So we can go play Nykthos, make 4 white, and then die. Well, we can't even tap the Nykthos because of the Thalia. So even if it was untapped, I believe we would still be dead. So let's go to game 2 here. This is a tough matchup because our opponent has not just early creatures, but they also have a way of disrupting us. And that's what the black-white deck is, exactly what this deck is supposed to do. And we're going to have to figure out a plan for game 2 in order to fight this. So the easiest way to go about doing this seems to be to get rid of our opponent's creatures. So Path to Exile, Journey to Nowhere, those seem like good cards in the matchup. Saw multiple Thalias, the Eldrazi package. I don't think Suppression Field is very good here. It could help stop something like an Aether Vial, like a Displacer, but I'm still going to board those out. Oblivion Ring is similar to the Path and the Journey. Flexible card. And Greater Aromancy, don't think we want that one. Nevermore, no. Aura of Silence, no. So we basically need one cut. I think I'm going to cut one copy of Leyline. Our opponents, maybe we can't cut any copies of Leyline, actually. Our opponent's got the Thought Knots, but beyond that, we may be facing some additional discard after sideboard. The copy of Dovescape, we may actually be able to cut. We could cut the Dovescape. We could go down on Ghost Quarters or Rune Halos. But I think the plan is to just get this Form of the Dragon into play. So I'm going to cut the Dovescape. And we're on the play here. Lots of removal, that's for sure. We do have a lot of removal. I think we want to keep. And maybe this Luminarch Ascension can do good work. If we can protect it for long enough, once it gets those 4 quest counters, it becomes a real win condition. But the issue is, can we get to that point? It looks like our opponent is playing Concealed Courtyards, which is another upgrade to this black-white deck, and I like that a lot. Because the black-white Eldrazi deck, it sometimes does have mana problems because you're trying to cast Eldrazi spells and both black and white cards. So, Luminarch Ascension on an empty board. Turns out it looks pretty solid, but I'm expecting our opponent to play like a Thalia here, or Tideheld Scholar. That's also pretty good, so we do have multiple paths, so if our opponent takes one, we can still use a path on a Sculler, but even so, pathing a Sculler, our opponent does gain an advantage from that play by getting that additional land. So if our opponent has a land light hand, that additional land is going to be quite good. So here's a Phyrexian Unlife. Sure. We can potentially get that into play later on. We could have Runed Haloed the Sculler, but I don't like that. I would rather path it here so that we can get back our other path. And if it was a creature that we didn't really care about that much, then we could just Runed Halo it. But since we don't want the Sculler to fully eat that path and to not get it back, so that's why I like taking this line. Alright, here's what we want our opponent to do. Activate the Ghost Quarter, get rid of our Flagstones. That would be the dream situation. So here's a Sculler. And that, it looks like, is just going to take our Phyrexian Unlife. Okay. So think we want to path away this Sculler as well. Now if we draw a land, we can go land, play for action on life. So that seems pretty solid. There's a Porphyr Nodes, not the draw we wanted for sure. So one option would be to just play out the Runed Halo. That doesn't seem that appealing though. I'm just gonna pass. We've fixed our opponent's mana, so those additional planes, hopefully they don't cause a lot of damage. Thalia, Heretic, Cathar, okay. That's a threat we can live with. But the Thalia Thraben, the Guardian of Thraben, is definitely more annoying. We're close to having those 4 quest counters. We're so close, but still kind of far away. So I think we want to play Porphyr Nodes here. It's the perfect opportunity to get it into play. And it's the only card we can cast, so basic planes, sure. I'm actually fine with that now. Hopefully the node stays in play and we can start going after our opponent's creatures, and then the Ascension becomes online, and we can really just take over this game. So our opponent's in a rough spot. Here's a Blade Splicer. Okay. So interesting. Okay, that's pretty good because now we're forced to get rid of the Blade Splicer even though we didn't really want to. Huh. I think I want to Prison Term the Golem here. And it's a good thing we kept this planes on top because the Blade Splicer is a very good way of distracting us from getting rid of this Thalia Guardian of Thraben. Because Porphyr Nodes does go after power. So this attack, it's going to bring us down to 10, but we still have tools to work with. Unfortunately, the Luminarch Ascension is not one of them. Here's a Flicker Wisp. Interesting. So our opponent's going to go after the Ascension, it looks like. So no real need to switch the Prison Term. And the Ascension is going to get flickered out, which is annoying. We are going to get rid of the Thalia here. And Leyline of Sanctity, not a great draw. So I'm going to just go ahead and run out Runed Halo now. And think we want to just stop the Flicker Wisp. Alternatively, could have played for Action on Life, could have played Leyline of Sanctity. Hoping not to see something like a Thought Knot would be annoying. The nodes it's going to eventually eat our opponent's board, but keyword there is eventually. Now, if our opponent does play a big creature, we can reattach the Prison Term, which is kind of nice. And we're going to want to get rid of the Thalia Heretic Cathar here with the nodes, assuming we have the opportunity to do so. Although there's a displacer that's pretty good. So we may have the opportunity to put Prison Term on the displacer. Prison Term, it does stop activated abilities, but what our opponent could do here is blink the Golem with the displacer with the Prison Term trigger on the stack. So then the Golem and the Prison Term would just be permanently gone. So the nice thing about the Porphyr nodes, though, is that it doesn't target. So we should be able to get rid of this displacer. But it looks like our opponent isn't done yet. So there's going to be an activation displacer on Flicker Wisp. That's going to blink the nodes during our end step. That makes sense. That's a really smart play. So now we don't have the nodes at all. That's frustrating. That is really frustrating. I think that might be that's going to be really a big problem for us. The Nykthos is going to come into play tapped. We can play out the Phyrexian Unlife, but this displacer plus Flicker Wisp means that our opponent is able to attack us and then displace Flicker Wisp and blink the Unlife. And I believe that would be... I believe our opponent has lethal on board. Well, no. The Flicker Wisp still can't deal us damage. So our opponent can Flicker Wisp out the Runed Halo now because our opponent just drew a fresh Flicker Wisp. This is going to mean our opponent can attack us. Well, okay, here's another Flicker Wisp. So this Flicker Wisp is going to probably go after the Unlife. And our opponent has lethal when we probably were going to be able to Enduring Ideal next turn. So that's pretty unfortunate. But Black-White Death and Taxes, not the best matchup, apparently. So that's going to be